She didn't come for forgiveness. She came to settle a debt. 7 months ago, Neve Callister walked out of the highest floor of the Dray tower with a duffel bag, a burner phone, and a number she had been running in her head for weeks. $32,400. That was what Cormac Dray had paid to keep her mother alive. Dialysis 3 times a week for 8 months. The best nephrologist in the Midwest, private room, no paperwork. He had written the check without being asked. He had told her it was a business expense. She had hated herself for letting him. Today, she had cash. $32,400, banded neatly in a manila envelope, tucked beneath her arm. She was here to put it on his desk and walk back out. That was the plan. The lobby of the Dray Group's headquarters on Michigan Avenue smelled like cold marble and expensive restraint. The kind of building that didn't need to announce what it was because everyone already knew. The security desk was staffed by a man she recognized, Patton, a former Marine who had worked Cormac's door for 11 years. When Neve pushed through the revolving glass, his eyes lifted, and then they dropped, just for a fraction of a second, down to the front of her long camel-colored coat. She had chosen the coat deliberately, oversized, belted high, cut to fall past her knees, the kind of thing you wore when you didn't want anyone looking at your body. Patton looked back at her face immediately, the way a trained man does when he's been caught noticing something he shouldn't. Miss Callister, his voice was neutral, practiced. Mr. Dray isn't expecting anyone. I know. She set her bag on the security counter and let him scan it. Tell him Neve is downstairs. He'll decide if he wants to see me. Patton's jaw moved slightly. He reached for his earpiece. She waited. She was good at waiting. She had spent 7 months doing it. Waiting in a studio apartment in Milwaukee with a space heater that sounded like it was dying. Eating oatmeal at odd hours. Working remote contracts under a name Cormac's people couldn't trace. She had gotten very comfortable with stillness. The elevator at the far end of the lobby opened. A man named Harbert stepped out. He was Cormac's head of operations, a compact and colorless person who ran complicated logistics the way other men ran marathons, with total, humorless commitment. He looked at Neve. He looked at her coat. He looked at her face. Something moved behind his eyes, something he locked down fast. "He'll see you," Harbert said. "3rd floor's in use. He's on 12. She followed him into the elevator. The doors slid shut. For 12 floors, neither of them spoke. In the reflection of the polished steel doors, Neve could see herself. Dark circles, jaw set, posture too straight, because if she relaxed her back would remind her exactly why it had been aching for 6 weeks. She was 6.5 months along. The coat was doing a reasonable job, at least from the front. She had not accounted for the fact that Cormac Dray looked at everything from all angles. The elevator opened into a private corridor. 2 men in dark suits were posted near a set of heavy glass doors etched with the Dray Group logo, a minimalist impression of a scale. Very on the nose, she had always thought. Harbert opened the door and stepped back. Neve walked in alone. The room was long, low-lit, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grey November lake. Cormac was standing with his back to her, one hand braced against the glass, phone pressed to his ear, looking out at the water. He wore a dark charcoal suit, no tie, the collar button undone, the posture of a man in the middle of a problem he was already solving. "Reschedule it," he said, voice low and even. "And tell Marchetti that if he needs another explanation, I'll provide it personally." A pause. "Good." He ended the call. He didn't turn around immediately. That was Cormac. He always made you wait for the turn. It was not cruelty. It was calibration. He was processing. He was running numbers. He was deciding in the 2 seconds before he looked at you exactly how he was going to handle whatever you brought him. He turned. Cormac Dray was 41 years old and had the kind of face that would have been handsome in a simple life. In this one, it was something different, a jaw too sharp, a mouth held in a permanent line of restraint, dark eyes that sorted everything they landed on into columns. Useful, not useful, threat, not threat. There was a scar along his left cheekbone, faint and silvered with age, from a night she had never been allowed the details of. He looked at her face. She watched his expression do nothing. That was the thing about Cormac. The surface never moved. You learn to read him in the small things. The faint tension at the corner of his jaw. The way his hand, which had been loose at his side, closed slowly into a fist. Neve. His voice was exactly the same as she remembered it, a register too low for the room. Dray. She crossed to the long conference table and set the envelope down on the polished wood. $32,400. Cash. Full repayment. She kept her hands on the envelope for a moment, steadying herself, then stepped back. I needed to do it in person. I wanted you to have it. He hadn't moved, his eyes were on her face. Why cash? He asked. Because a wire transfer has a return address. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Cormac did not do surprise, but a recognition, an acknowledgement that she had planned this, that she was not here impulsively. Take off the coat, he said. Her heart stopped. I'm cold, she said. You're not. He took a step forward. One step, measured, like a man who knew exactly how much ground he needed to cover. I turned the heat up when Harbert told me you were in the elevator. It's 70 degrees in this room. His voice did not rise. Take off the coat. She didn't move. Cormac stopped 3 feet from her. He looked at her face for a long moment, the hollows under her eyes, the particular pallor that comes from months of insufficient sleep and iron-poor meals, and then his gaze dropped. She watched him look at her coat, at the way it fell, at the shape of her beneath it. She watched him do the math. Cormac Dray took a long breath through his nose. He said nothing for 5 full seconds, which, from him, was the equivalent of another man screaming. How far along, he said. It was not a question. Neve's hands were steady. She had practiced this 26 weeks. He closed his eyes, opened them. 26 weeks. He repeated the number slowly, as if entering it into a ledger. And you came here to give me a cash payment for your mother's bills. Yes. Not to tell me. I'm telling you now. Because you were backed into it. His voice was very quiet, not because you chose to. She didn't answer. The silence said enough. Cormac turned away from her. He walked to the window and stood with his back to the room, hands in his pockets, looking out at the lake. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the line of them barely contained. Who else knows? He said. No one. Not your mother. My mother thinks I've been on a long-term contract in Denver. She paused. She doesn't know anything. Another silence. The city moved silently beyond the glass. On the street 30 floors down, people walked in coats and scarves, entirely unaware that the entire distribution of power in this room had just shifted. Why did you run? Cormac said. Neve let out a slow breath. She had rehearsed this too. The Bellerin crew had been watching me for 2 weeks before I left. I didn't know at first. Then I saw the same car 3 days running outside my building. I ran the plates. She paused. They belonged to a man on your known associates list. A Bellerin enforcer. Cormac turned around. His face was still controlled, but something had sharpened behind his eyes. They weren't watching me to get to you. Neve continued. They were watching me because someone on your inside told them I was valuable. Not as a hostage, as a source. They wanted your books, Dray. I had access to everything. The offshore accounts, the shell structures, the import manifests. They thought if they pressured me, I would give it up. She crossed her arms over the front of her coat. I found out I was pregnant 4 days before I realized they had a tail on me. You should have come to me, Cormac said. I almost did. She met his eyes. And then I thought about what would happen the moment your enemies found out what I was carrying. I wasn't a source anymore. I was leverage. Not for the books, for you. The one thing in this city that could make Cormac Dray sit down at a table and negotiate. Her voice didn't shake. She had made sure of that. I refused to be that. I refused to let our child be that. The word dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Cormac said nothing for a long time. When he moved, it was toward her, slow and deliberate, the way he moved when he had made a decision and was executing it. He stopped directly in front of her. He reached out, his hand moving to the belt of her coat, and she caught his wrist. "Don't," she said. "I need to see." Still low, still controlled, but something underneath it had broken open just slightly, the way ice cracks before it gives. "Neve, let me see." She dropped her hand. He undid the belt of her coat with the same methodical care he applied to everything. He parted it at the front. And then he went absolutely still. The swell of her pregnancy was impossible to misread, visible now in the fitted black sweater she wore underneath. The rounded, undeniable arc of a child who had been growing steadily for 6.5 months without anyone in this world knowing it existed. Cormac's hands came to rest at either side of her belly before she could say anything, not grasping, just holding, as if she were something fragile, as if the world required a different kind of care now, and he was recalibrating in real time. "The Bellerans," he said. His voice was thin. "They went quiet after you took the ports in March," she said. "I followed the news. I thought the threat had passed." She looked down at his hands against the fabric of her sweater. "And then I ran out of money." He lifted his eyes to hers. In them, saw something she had never seen from him in 18 months of working at close range. A man who did not know what to do next. It lasted only a moment. "Take the coat off," he said, differently this time. "Sit down. You look like you haven't eaten today." "I had something at the train station." "That isn't food." He straightened and moved toward the phone on the conference table. "I'm having something brought up, and I'm calling Dr. Osei." "Dr. Osei is your physician?" "Yes, who is also board certified in obstetrics, a credential he has maintained for 15 years and never used in my presence until right now." He was already dialing. "Don't argue with me about this." She sat down. She told herself it was because her back hurt. That was true enough. Dr. Osei arrived in 40 minutes. He was a quiet, thorough man in his 60s who greeted Neve with professional warmth and Cormac with the careful neutrality of someone who had long since learned not to read into the situations he was called to manage. He set up a portable ultrasound unit on the end of the conference table that had been cleared, silently, while Neve ate a bowl of soup she hadn't been asked about. She lay back on her coat, spread over the table as a makeshift cushion. Osei applied the gel, cold, even through her sweater, and Neve stared at the ceiling. Cormac stood at the foot of the table with his arms crossed and said nothing. The monitor flickered. A shape resolved on the screen, curved spine, small ribcage, the unmistakable shadowy profile of a face turned slightly to the side, as if shy about the audience. "Active baby," Dr. Osei observed. "Good positioning. Measurements track well for 26 weeks." He shifted the wand. The sound came without warning, fast, rhythmic, a galloping drumbeat that filled the quiet of the room and bounced off the glass walls and the high ceiling and went everywhere all at once. The heartbeat. Neve's throat tightened without her permission. She heard Cormac exhale, a single controlled breath released slowly, as if letting go of a pressure he hadn't named until this moment. She turned her head and looked at him. He was looking at the screen. The hard lines of his face had done something she had never seen them do. Not softened, exactly. Cormac Dray did not soften. But the calculation behind his eyes had stopped. He was not sorting this into columns. He was just looking. He pulled a chair from behind him and sat down next to the table without being asked. He didn't touch her. He just sat close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, watching the monitor with an expression she didn't have a name for yet. "Boy or girl?" he asked. His voice was raw in a way she had never heard from him. "I don't know," Neve said, before the doctor could speak. Cormac glanced at her. "I didn't ask them to tell me." She turned her face back to the ceiling. "I wasn't sure I'd be here long enough for it to matter." A silence. "You're here," Cormac said quietly. "It matters." Dr. Osei finished the exam with efficient kindness, wrote a prescription for prenatal vitamins and an iron supplement, cited her hemoglobin levels with pointed professionalism, and left with the same quiet thoroughness with which he had arrived. Neve sat up slowly, and pulled her sweater back down. Cormac was still in the chair beside her. "The Bellarons," he said. "You said they went quiet." "In March." "They didn't go quiet." His voice was flat and careful. "They restructured, brought in outside people. I've had 3 attempted incursions in 6 months, all from different entry points, no clear signature." He paused. "Last week one of my freight managers was approached with a cash offer for interior access. He came to me." The cold moved through her chest before she finished processing the sentence. "They're still building," she said. "Which means Milwaukee was not safe. It was hidden," he stood. "Those aren't the same thing." He moved to the window, the same position as when she arrived, but different now. She understood it differently. He was not making her wait. He was thinking out loud in the only way Cormac knew how, by facing away and running the numbers. Hidden means you're a problem someone hasn't found yet. Safe means they can't reach you at all. He turned. "You're staying." He said it the way he said everything, as a conclusion, not a suggestion. "The building on Wacker has 3 fully secured residential floors. I'll have the East Suite made up tonight. Harbert will arrange for your things to be brought from Milwaukee." "I haven't agreed to anything." "You came here," he said. "You could have sent the money by courier. You chose to come yourself." He stopped in front of her. "Tell me why." She looked at him. The honest answers lodged somewhere behind her sternum and refused to move. "I wanted to close it," she said finally. "The debt. I wanted it done in person." "There is no debt." His voice was quiet. "There was never a debt. I paid your mother's bills because I chose to. You didn't owe me $1 of that money." "Then why did you let me believe I did?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because it was the only thing keeping you tethered." The admission fell between them with a weight she hadn't expected. She stared at him. Cormac Dray, a man who had never said a single thing carelessly in all the time she had known him, was clearly aware of exactly what he had just given away. He didn't take it back. "You stay," he said, quieter now, "not as an obligation, not as a problem I'm managing." He reached out, and his hand curved around the side of her face, a gesture so unexpectedly gentle from a man she had catalogued as operating entirely without softness that she went completely still. "As mine, both of you." "That's a significant claim," she said. "I'm aware. You don't do things like this." "I've never had a reason to." His thumb moved across her cheekbone. "Now I do." She should have argued. She had arguments prepared, reasonable ones about autonomy and circumstance and the fundamental impossibility of building a life alongside a man whose world was constructed from harm. She was 6.5 months pregnant. Her iron was low. Her back ached. And the first person who had looked at her in months actually looked, not through her, not at what she represented, was the one person she had built her entire disappearance around avoiding. "If they find out," she said. "When they find out," he corrected. "This city runs on information. They'll know within a week." He let his hand drop. "That's why we move fast." "What does moving fast mean for you?" "It means the Bellaron problem gets resolved before the month is out." He said it the way he might say the invoice gets processed, as if it were already done. "And it means you don't leave this building without me or Harbert until it is." "You're describing a very comfortable prison." "I'm describing the only arrangement that keeps you breathing. No apology in it, just fact delivered cleanly. You can be angry about it, that's fair, but you're staying." She looked at him for a long moment, at the scar along his cheekbone and the controlled stillness and the dark eyes that were, right now, showing her something she had no name for yet. "I have conditions," she said. Something moved in his expression. It might have been relief. "Name them." "I keep working. Remote contracts under my own name. I'm not disappearing into this building and losing everything I've built." "Agreed." "I talked to my mother. The truth, a version of it. She doesn't need details, but she's done thinking I'm in Denver." He hesitated. "After we've secured." "No, now. She's 63 years old, and she's been worried for 7 months. Neve held his gaze. "She gets a phone call tonight." A pause, he conceded. She shifted off the table and stood. Her back registered this with great enthusiasm. She reached for her coat, and he took it from her before she could manage it, holding it open without ceremony while she slid her arms in. She turned to face him. "I didn't come here to stay," she said. "I know." He reached past her and picked up the manila envelope from the table. He held it out to her. "Take it back. That's your money." "It was never my money." He set it on top of her bag. "Buy the baby something." Neve looked at the envelope, looked at him. "You're not as uncomplicated as you pretend to be," she said. "No," he agreed, "I'm not." She picked up her bag. He stood aside and let her walk toward the door. "Neve." She stopped. "You said you ran because you didn't want our child used against me." He was behind her, not touching her, just close. "I understand that. I won't pretend it wasn't rational." A pause. She could hear him choosing the next words with the same precision he applied to everything. "But the next time something threatens you, or this child, you come to me first, not after, not when you run out of options." She thought about the car outside her building. Same plates, 3 days running. The sick drop of her stomach when she had understood what it meant. The test she had taken in a gas station bathroom, 2 pink lines, and the way she had sat on the floor for 20 minutes doing calculations, not of joy or fear exactly, but of risk and exposure and probability, the same math she had always done, except this time the variable that mattered most had a heartbeat. She had made every decision since then alone. She was so tired of being alone. "All right," she said, "just that." She heard him breathe. She pushed open the glass door and walked out into the corridor, where Harbert was already waiting, phone in hand, ready to arrange the East Suite and the transport of her things, and whatever else Cormac Dray had already decided would be set into motion before she reached the lobby. The manila envelope was in her bag, $32,400 she hadn't been able to give back. Buy the baby something. In the elevator going down alone, she pressed her palm flat against the front of her coat and felt the small shifting weight respond. A turn, a kick, a tiny body already impatient with stillness, already making its preferences known to anyone paying attention. "Okay," she said quietly, to no one visible. "Okay." The elevator opened into the marble lobby. Patton looked up from the security desk as she crossed toward the revolving door. He looked at her coat, at her face. "Have a good evening, Miss Callister," he said with the tone of a man who had already been briefed. She walked back out into the cold grey afternoon. By nightfall she was on the 31st floor, in a room with windows facing the lake, eating food she hadn't cooked herself for the first time in 7 months, listening to the sounds of the city below. Distant horns, the freight line running 3 blocks east, the ordinary noise of people going about lives that had nothing to do with any of this. Her phone rang, Milwaukee area code. She looked at it for a moment, then answered. "Hi, Mum," she said. I know it's been a while. I have something to tell you." Somewhere on the floor above, she could hear movement, the deliberate, unhurried footsteps of a man who had just set down his calculations and picked up something considerably harder to quantify. She had not come here to stay. She had come to close a debt that didn't exist, offered by a man who had manufactured it on purpose to keep her from drifting entirely beyond reach. She wasn't sure yet what to do with that. She wasn't sure what to do with any of it. The suite that smelled like cedar and clean linen, the soup she hadn't asked for, the way his hands had gone still against her coat like he was afraid to move and break something. But the baby was kicking steadily against her ribs, patient and insistent, as if to say, "This is a beginning, not an ending." And Neve Callister, who was very good with numbers, looked out at the November lake and started, carefully, to count from here.